Episode, and I'm really excited today. We don't talk enough about marketing and branding, and I was very lucky to meet the amazing Breda when I was at the Hospitality Expo, and I watched her on stage give a fantastic talk around branding and marketing, and I just felt the way she articulated it for businesses was a really tangible, easy way to understand it. And I think a lot of us can revisit our branding and marketing, and it's something we should be really looking at all the time. How do we build brand authority? How do we own the space we're in? And before I go any further, I would really like Breda to just introduce yourself, if you don't mind, to anyone that doesn't know you, and a little bit about what you do and your background.
Absolutely. And thank you for such a lovely introduction and for listening to me at the Hospitality Expo. It was a great event and really enjoyed, was very delighted to be invited to speak at it. And it was very well attended, I think. Would you agree?
Definitely, yeah. Great diverse group of people that were there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it was heavy on the tech.
yeah.
Like there was a lot of major new technology players at the Hospitality Expo that had put a lot of money into making sure that their stands were really large. And I thought, okay, this is a sign of confidence. This is a sign of we want to be in the Irish market. And so yeah, so that for me was the biggest takeaway from the Hospitality Expo, Louise, was that there's a lot of brands out there and they're spending a lot of money.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I come from, as you know, I've been in the hospitality sector for my entire career. A few times I left it, but for very briefly. I started by doing hotel management. I trained in hotel management. I worked in operations for a number of years. I went as part of my training. I trained in America with a brand called ANA, All Nippon Airways, and which is an airline company that also have back then they had 5 luxury hotels. And that changed the course of my career. It was they were one of the most technologically advanced hotel groups in the world at the time. Now that's 25 years ago, but they were at that point they were trying to go paperless.
Wow.
Can you believe? And
That is crazy. That is crazy because we're in a place now and we're trying to do that. And if you can think back then, that must have been so innovative.
they
Yeah.
were very innovative. And because their core business was airlines, they really were bringing all of those that experience and that's all of those skills and saying, right, how can we bring this to the hotel sector? And one of the key things that they brought was a deep understanding of revenue management and maximizing revenue potential. And we're deciding how do we do that by leveraging technology. So that changed my career in many regards. So when I came back to Ireland, I went back to college and studied business and tourism in UCD in Smurfit. And then when I graduated, I got a job grading hotels. Would you believe it? For 5 years.
Wow. That is must
The
be really
ultimate job. The
yeah,
ultimate job. The
really
ultimate.
interesting job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to drive around Ireland in my car, visiting hotels every day and staying in hotels. And yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I look back on it and I think, my God, what a gift it was at the time to meet owners and to see what they were doing, to ask them and find out about their business, what was working, what wasn't working. And so really, and there's only so long you can do that for. I started, it's a lot of travel.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, what's the next move? And the next move was to move into consulting. I joined one of the accountancy firms that had a large portfolio of hotel clients, and they wanted to be able to help them, not just on the finance side, but on the broader advisory side in terms of helping them expand, helping them with performance, helping them with their marketing plans, their business plans, their strategy. And yeah, and so I did that in Crow, Horworth. And then I left them and went to PricewaterhouseCoopers And right now I'm in Deloitte, working with the travel, hospitality and leisure team in Deloitte with Rebecca Robinson, who leads the travel, hospitality and leisure group. So yeah, so that's a whistle stop tour. It's a very short version of the story. Obviously there's loads of, but yeah, that's how I ended up. And because within the hotel sector, brand players, I realized when I was working with both independent hotels and the larger brands, I was able to gain a deeper understanding of what the big brands do, how they do it, and what value they bring. And that's where my move into branding and strategy, that's what drove that. So it started with just negotiating brand contracts. And then it was, okay, well, why are we paying them these huge fees? And then it was about understanding what they're bringing, the value they're bringing, and why they're able to command and justify those. And they are. They in most cases, there is very strong justification for bringing a brand to the table. And it was about understanding brand equity and how you build that. And that for me was a key component of was getting deeper into why are the brands so successful? What are they doing that we're not doing? So that's and that for me was an area that I was always incredibly interested in. About and in many cases it's because they're investing in understanding the customer and making sure that they're building that brand equity and all of the elements of brand equity, and not just focusing on one piece of the puzzle, which a lot of people do, which is on their brand identity or on brand awareness.
Yes, yeah. And I think that leads really well into, I suppose, the look of branding, I suppose, and building a brand entity, and building that brand authority. And if we look at the likes of, Nike as an example, if Nike opened a hotel in the morning, we would have an idea of what we're getting, okay?
Yes.
Versus if, for example, the Hilton or the Marriott were to do a pair of sneakers, would we know, would the same understanding be there? So is there, what the difference there is, are we building a brand and understanding that if we, what does that personality of that brand look like? And I think that, if we look at brands that do it really, really well and invest in it, like you said, and do the research and be really clear on what that brand persona is and the personality of it is, I think that there is so much room for growth there,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is. And the thing is that what happens is that some companies, some businesses, they'll get one piece of it right. They'll heavily invest in their brand, in the brand look and feel.
Yes.
But they'll ignore the service element of that experience. Or it may be that they get the service element of the experience and they invest heavily on delivering on the service side, but they're not valuing the design piece, the aesthetics. And experience, as we know, is very complex and multifaceted, and it's about looking at all elements of the experience, whether that's and it's about every single touch point that person has with the brand. I mean, you mentioned a number of brands there, and the thing is that when you look at brand equity, it's not just about brand awareness, and it's also not just about brand uniformity in terms of saying, I know what this is going to look like. I know what this is going to taste like. I also know what potentially I'm going to get. Brand equity is about brand loyalty. How loyal are people to the brand? And in a lot of cases, particularly when it comes to hotels, that's very important. It's very important to understand, has this, and everybody might know the name of the brand, so it may tick the brand awareness box.
Yes,
and say,
exactly.
We all know who the brand is. So yes, you've been great at achieving brand awareness, but what do they think about you? When they think about the brand and it comes and you've achieved that first of mind box, you've ticked it, but are they thinking positive things? Are they thinking things that will actually cause them to buy or to book or to
Exactly.
actually go to that hotel. And then
Exactly.
you've got, in terms of brand equity, and the thing is that in many cases, we all know that what doesn't get, that you have to be able to measure brand equity. And in many cases, the only measurement that's ever really done is maybe, yes, quality and yes, brand awareness, but a lot of the other elements of brand equity, like brand associations and perceived quality, are not measured. So they don't get managed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really interesting what you said there, because if we look at and there's a crossover between retail and hospitality, but if we look at, I was booking a hotel there a week ago. I'm going to London, and you go on to any of the sites, and you're filtering by location and by cost, okay? But there's an emergence now of a lot of these boutique hotels. They're not offering the spas, the pools that the other bigger chains are offering.
Yes.
So you can actually offer. So what's going to make your customer pay more money is actually by having that understanding of, I'm getting more from it. So, a boutique, it doesn't have all the services that maybe the chains have, but they're offering something. There's a persona behind it. I know
Yeah.
going there, I'm going to get a unique experience. It's going to feel different. I'm going to walk into the lobby. There's going to be, a really lovely feel there, the meal, so again, when we look at branding, that really increases our proposition. And is it going to make the customer buy off us more, or are we just being put
Yeah.
into a filter piece where we're just being chosen based on price? And I think that ultimately goes back to what you said there. Is it just brand awareness, or does it go further than that?
Absolutely, it does go further. And we've seen that. We've seen
Yes.
that with a number of the successful Irish hotel brands
Yes.
that have grown in the market. We've seen them grow. And if you look at someone like, for instance, the Dean Hotel Group,
Yes.
they have been successful for a number of reasons. But I would say, in my humble opinion, it's because they understood design, and they understood that their customers wanted to stay somewhere where all of those design elements were considered, and that the experience that was being delivered would resonate with them as a customer. And they achieved that. They absolutely. So they may have some of their rooms may be smaller. They may not have the extensive facilities that some of the other hotels have, but they understood that it was about a combination of location and fitting those rooms out to a very high standard, but that they knew their customers were prepared to sacrifice circulation space, but they did not want to sacrifice design. And they got that right. And there's loads of examples of that, particularly if you look at the Hoxton, which is coming into Dublin now soon. Citizen M have understood that. Citizen M have taken it a step further, and they've said, okay, we'll keep the room simple, and we'll make the public areas the design focus, so that you're really getting a very considered, and that design, that experience is delivered at every single touch point. So there's consistency, and that the brand that you're getting at every touch point, that they're delivering a brand promise at every touch point. And they have to think about, well, how do we do that? How do we ensure that at every touch point, the customer understands that it's us they're dealing with, and that our personality as a brand shines through? And what is it we want to reflect in that touch point? And that requires a huge commitment. It also requires someone to care enough. Someone needs to care enough to say, we're going to invest in this, and we're going to get it right. And we want to give customers what they want. We're not going to just take things out like the swimming pool or the leisure centre or the meeting space, like you said. So what do we put back in? How do we design this experience to make sure that our brand is reflected from the moment they open their phone and look for us, from the moment they share it on TikTok and say, look at how amazing this hotel is? And that means understanding the customer, and understanding really understanding their needs, their behavior, what is it their aspirations, their dreams. It's about really getting underneath the big and getting understanding that consumer at a really micro level.
Yeah, and I think where you're going with this conversation is great, and Brita, because it's bringing us back to, I think, the core of what we had a discussion on. I think it must have been maybe 2 weeks ago, which was understanding who it is we're serving, which I think is
Yes,
so
yes,
important. And when you mentioned the Dean there, the images that come into my head when I think of the Dean is luxury,
yeah. And
is,
it's and the thing is that
and
as a
you get
category,
that feel.
it doesn't sit within luxury,
Mm.
and it's not within that luxury category from a hotel perspective,
Mm.
but it is very successfully positioning itself as affordable luxury.
Exactly.
So it may not be as luxurious as a luxury hotel is going to be. However, you're not sacrificing on design. The design of this, we can give you design, but it doesn't have to cost the earth.
Yeah, and that's so, so important. If we go back to understanding, how does a brand, how do they understand who their customer is? Because I've seen some, some particular retailers, some businesses, and when they really narrow down that customer persona, they can really hone in on
Yeah.
how do we now present that to the marketplace? How do we now go out and sell who it is we are, what it is we offer?
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, so going back to that, I think that research piece, which is so critical, in understanding the different personas within your brand and who we serve within that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that that research gets skipped. We know that. I know that, you know that, that in a lot of cases, a lot of a lot of business owners will think, I know who the customer is. We can skip this stage. And that's where it all falls down. It's where they skip that stage of saying, you know what, the consumer has changed, their behavior has changed, the media that they use has changed, and it's changing at a pace that's really hard to catch up. And what they're buying has fundamentally changed, where they're buying has fundamentally changed, everything. It's been a complete 360. So, and that's putting pressure on hoteliers, but it's also putting pressure on all retail, everybody within the service industry. And the ones that are getting it right are saying, right, let's not make any assumptions here. Let's go back to basics. Let's not get distracted by all of the noise about Gen AI and technology and keyless rooms or TikTok. Let's actually stop everything and go back and say, who is it our customer is? Let's group them into 4 or 5 groups. Let's really understand them and then develop a persona profile for each one of those and make sure any decision that we're making or any investment that we're making is considering them first and foremost. And let's not get distracted by that. And if we're making decisions or trying to develop an experience or sell a product that doesn't resonate with that core customer group, then you really have to ask yourself, why are you doing this? And it's going back to basics in many respects, I believe.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think it's so prevalent and it's so important when I speak to some people and they go, who's your customer? And they go, oh, everyone is my customer. Or, we cater for all age groups. And very often it's confusing journey for the customer,
Mm.
because when we look at our marketing, we put our POS up and, in our different businesses that we operate, who are we talking to?
Mm.
And is it clear on who we're talking to? And I think I discussed this with you before, but I think the DIY market is a really interesting concept. If we look at the likes of Woodies and B&Q in the marketplace, they redesigned their whole concept based off of their changing customer market. So the builder provider that used to be coming in the door a long time ago is no longer going in the door. It's more of a female customer. So why aren't we reformatting our stores, refitting it with that female customer? Because we know that they're going to buy in bulk. We know it's going to increase the average basket spend. And again, it's similar in the hospitality. So I suppose what would be the first steps if you went into a business, Breda, and they were maybe catering for, I don't know, all types of customers, the business customer, the family customer. They're trying to cater for everyone. And we're trying to peel back the layers. So where is a good place for them to start on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the starting point is to say, let's see not just who our customer is, but potentially who our customer can be. But it starts with who is it right now? And it starts with saying, okay, let's do some basic demography in terms of age profile, in terms of their behavior, and then bring together. I always love focus groups. I think they yield enormous. It's where you really get a chance to explore, and then you can do the observational stuff and obviously the data analysis, but it's about literally getting in front of the customer and interviewing them and then grouping them into, being able to group them into certain tribes and saying, okay, we've narrowed it down to 3 or 4 tribes that we think these are the groups that represent our customer in terms of behavior and in terms of needs assessment.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's really interesting. I think the focus groups, especially getting it in touch with our frontline teams, Breda, because sometimes I think there's a disconnect there,
Yes.
sometimes from the departments, with what's
Yes.
happening on the front line. And
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
often that demographic might change over the course of a few years.
Yeah.
We're not maybe keeping those touch points in place. And I think
But
getting that feedback, yeah.
I think as well
Mm,
is that it can be a
mm,
power thing as well, Louise. Like if there's nobody at the top table that cares enough about understanding the customer in a granular way, it's not going to happen.
yes.
And what will happen instead is that somebody with the authority and the power to make decisions at the top table will say, potentially, just
Mhm.
look at some data, hard
Yeah.
data,
Mhm.
or basic demographics and make decisions that way. And I think that that's probably where the mistakes start to happen, where you don't have someone at the top table who can say, this is paramount to our business. Understanding our customer has to be one of the most, before we start designing new concepts or rolling out new brands or changing names or bringing in new products, let's really get back. And you're right, starting with your staff is 100% one of the best ways to start. And then based on that feedback, deciding what focus groups you will do. And it is a real case of going back to basics, but it's also about making sure that the stages don't get skipped and that someone doesn't have assumptions made already.
Yeah.
Generally, you will have someone at the table who's decided already, oh, I know who it is. I know who they are.
Mm.
And you'll say, well, you know what? I don't think we should be making huge investment decisions and risking the future of this business on the assumption of one person deciding they know who the customer is, and it comes down to their taste. I've often gone into breakfast buffets and seen this mad stuff on buffets and going, who thought that, who? And then you'll find out that the owner loves it, loves this, and it's because, and they have the power to make that decision.
Yeah.
Or they'll change the pillows, and the customers are complaining about the pillows. And I'll ask the staff why, and they'll say, well, the owner liked them. He's had them on holidays and he loved them. So he put them in all the bedrooms. And you're like, right, okay. And you can't get around that. That's going to happen. And in some cases, they'll get it right.
Yeah.
And in other, and it will be an improvement in the overall experience. But and then 50% of the time it'll be it will be potentially the wrong decision. Or you'll get a menu which is designed to meet the needs of the owner, or someone that the owner knows, and he decides, you know what, this menu is not working and I'm going to change it. And it's not about the customer, it's about personal choice. And it's all about, we all do it.
Yeah.
You know, we all do this. This isn't me giving out about, I will do it myself, but we all think that, oh, well, if I love it, surely to God, everybody loves it.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And I do think that it can be hard sometimes to accept that you are not the tribe. You know, like I get it, you know, from a fashion perspective, you'll totally get this,
Yeah.
you know, where someone says, you know, I really don't, you know, I'm not so sure about that oversized jacket that you bought in the Frankie shop that you paid a huge premium for. And my first thing will be, you are not my target audience. You know, and it's about understanding who your target audience is, and actually, and being brave enough to accept criticism when the people who aren't your target audience or your tribe don't like what you're offering.
Yeah, I think that is so important. And I think when you're consulting, especially the personal, you know, the personal preference comes into it, and the perspective of what you mentioned there, which is, you know, one customer or two customers might have asked for something, while that owner might have been on the floor, and now they're saying, we're going to buy into this product. And you're kind of going, what is this based on? Two interactions over the course of, like, you know, 4 months. And we're now changing the offering, but we're not actually engaging with the team on the front line, where they go, they never really asked for this. That was just those 2 times, you know. So again, it's what you said there. It's been open enough to go that, you know, I'm not there on the desk the whole time. I'm not there facing them the whole time. I need to figure out what's going on, in order to understand that. And I think if we're looking at data, the data will dictate and tell us how we're performing in what we're already selling. Okay. If we want to extend the offering or to add in a new product or a service, that's where the feedback comes in, because we're understanding what the needs are of the customer coming in the door. So we won't get that off the products we're already offering. So very often when I would work at retailers and they go, you know, we want to buy in this whole new range, and I'm going, okay, well, that's a high-end range. You know, we have a local market. So, you know, we don't have that customer coming in the door in Galway or in the county stores. Whereas if you go to the city stores like Dublin or Cork, it's a very different customer market. And I think it's understanding that we're not going into a different area, or we're flying over to London or Amsterdam and thinking that we can emulate what they have in our local market. That is, and I see that happening a lot, Breda, where they see this amazing stuff being done, but now we're alienating the customers that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have seen that over the years with some of the larger international hotel brands that have entered the Irish market. And in many, and 2 good examples, one would be where it was a destination resort. And it was an international brand, and they insisted on putting the bar in the foyer rather than in the banqueting room. And honestly, the local market were very, very critical of that, and it just didn't work. And ultimately, they had to redesign the room to suit the local market, particularly when it comes to food and beverage. That can be driven predominantly by the local market. It's not always the case that you have to, like, I would not be saying that you have to cater. If you're building a 5-star destination resort, you're not building that. Your tribe are not local. You know, that's for sure.
That's different.
So it's very different. And that's very important, that you are going to alienate some customers, and those customers can be very close to your hotel. And again, that's where the bravery comes in, and saying, actually, they're not our customer. Our customer are North Americans who are prepared to pay for luxury premium as long as they get the experience that they want. And this is the experience that they want. And it's about always staying hyper focused on who it is is your primary market, and making sure that that persona profile that you've created is on the wall. And when you're having your strategy meetings, that everybody's looking at it going, do not forget who our core customer is here, and make sure that our decisions are aligned with who we know to be our tribe. And then the other one is, in some cases, particularly with large hotel brands, they ultimately, it's about, can they deliver the customers, and can they deliver? And that's generally through a loyalty program.
Yeah.
And the second big deliverable for any big international hotel brand, it's about rate. So assuming that they have brand awareness, and that the brand associations are positive,
yeah,
and that you need to then understand, well, is this a brand that can deliver in the location where my hotel is? And we've loads of examples where that has not happened, where millions have been spent on complying with brand standards and putting brands into hotels in regional Ireland, where it just did not work, because the customer profile and the brand, the fit wasn't right between those two. And it's about fit. And it's easier to assess fit in city locations.
Yes.
It's very easy to assess fit in luxury destination resorts and airport locations. Those three locations, it's pretty easy to assess who your customers. But when you break out of those three, city center, luxury destinations and airport locations, when you move out of those three, then it becomes more complicated. And that's where you really have to then say, well, the brand fit assessment becomes more complicated then, particularly for hotels.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, because if I look at the retail, and there's always a crossover, retail and hospitality. If we look at the shopping center fit and the high street model, right? And if I look at, a particular store in a high street mightn't perform the same way in a shopping center. If they go to a high street, it has to be a destination piece, okay? So there has to be a reason you're getting people to pay for parking and come all the way up that high street to visit your premises, versus a shopping center where you're guaranteed that footfall coming in the door. So, it does come down to, what traffic do we have coming in? Where's the demographic of those traffic, of the footfall coming into the business? And that's really that customer count. Where is the footfall coming from? What is the location telling us in the surrounding area? And we're nearly trying to build a story around how does that fit into the profile that we have now built for the business? Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that takes time. And that can be complicated. It sounds simple. When you say tell a brand story, it sounds, it's a bit like, I always think of skiing. You look at people skiing and you think, oh, it looks so easy. And it's not. And I think, or the other great example is, when you're trying to pick a brand name and you're trying to look at the overall, and the amount of man hours that goes into it. And then someone will come along and go, oh no, I just picked that name and that's it. And it's not, that was it. So, it's about understanding the amount of investment required in getting it right.
Yes.
And about remaining open and saying, okay, we need to stay as close to our customer as possible, so that we know when their needs are changing.
Yes. Yeah. We've talked through so much today, Breed. I really appreciate you coming on. And just to summarize, we talked around understanding your customer profile. We talked about doing the research, especially with the frontline team. Ask your staff, guys. They're the first touch point for your customer. What is that telling you about that? Sticking to those customer profiles. So once we have designed them out, bringing that into your strategy pieces, bringing that into your budgets, and aligning that marketing strategy budget with those profiles to see where the ROI is along that. really understanding what your market is telling you, the locality of it, and what you can get out of that.
Yes.
And I think the number one thing here is not skipping the steps. So again,
Yeah.
understanding that process. And if you don't
Yes.
have that process, then find someone that knows it. Maybe
Yes.
that's not very close to you, someone in house. But again, Breda, going to a consultant or something, someone external that can give you that great advice and support, and see things from a different pair of
Yes.
lenses, which I think is really important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing we didn't talk about, and we maybe next time,
Yes.
is trends and
Yes.
understanding the big trends that are influencing your market.
Yeah. Yeah. We will be back. I loved this conversation. I could have kept
Me
it
too.
going. Thank you so much, Breda, for coming on. And I'll definitely have you back and we'll touch on trends on the next episode. Thank you so much, Breda.
Thank you so much. It was a joy talking to you.
And if anyone wants to reach out to you, can they reach out to you on LinkedIn or where can they find you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'll have your link underneath here in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.